The rain had been steady that night, casting a sheen over the tarmac at New Orleans International Airport. It was 1:59 a.m., February 25th, 1964, and the Eastern Airlines Flight 304, a Douglas DC-8, was cleared for takeoff. The aircraft had originated in Mexico City, and it was bound for Washington, D.C. It had scheduled stops in New Orleans and Atlanta. On board were 51 passengers and 7 crew members, settling in for what should have been a very routine flight. Among them were business travelers heading to meetings, vacationers returning home, and even a honeymooning couple looking forward to their future. One passenger in particular stood out: Kenneth Spencer, a world-renowned baritone singer and actor. Spencer had built an impressive career in opera, film, and theater, gaining international recognition, particularly in Germany. And now he was headed back to the United States. But he would never arrive home. 9 minutes after takeoff, Flight 304 vanished from radar. The aircraft crashed into the cold, choppy waters of Lake Pontchartrain, 20 miles or 32 kilometers northeast of New Orleans. There were no distress calls, no time for emergency maneuvers, just silence. Fishermen near the lake that night later recalled seeing a faint glow in the sky, possibly the aircraft's lights, before it plummeted at high speed directly into the water, breaking apart on impact. The crash was so violent that the debris was strewn across miles of lake bed, and the force of the impact left no chance of survival. Rescue teams arrived quickly, hoping for a miracle. But what they found instead was a wreckage floating in the frigid water. Seat cushions, luggage, shattered pieces of fuselage. Over the following days, divers braved treacherous currents and near zero visibility to retrieve parts of the aircraft from the murky depths. With no survivors and little immediate evidence, the Civil Aeronautics Board, CAB, launched an extensive investigation. The DC-8 was one of the most advanced jetliners of the time, a sleek, high-speed aircraft designed for long-range travel. But early jet aviation did come with risk, particularly instrument reliability and pilot adaptation to high-speed flight dynamics. The CAB recovered sections of the fuselage, cockpit components, and engine parts, meticulously reconstructing what they could. There were no signs of structural failure or mechanical breakdown. Instead, investigators zeroed in on the possibility of an undetected instrument failure, one that may have led the pilots into spatial disorientation. Flying at night over a vast, featureless body of water, it does present a very unique danger: the complete absence of external visual references. Pilots rely entirely on instruments to maintain orientation. If those instruments fail or mislead them, they can lose all sense of where is up and where is down. This is called spatial disorientation. It's led to multiple aviation disasters. A malfunctioning altitude indicator or altimeter could trick a pilot into believing that they are level when they are in fact banking into an uncontrolled descent. And without visual confirmation, correcting the perceived error can actually worsen the situation, leading to what's known as a graveyard spiral. This was likely what happened aboard Flight 304. The lack of flight data recorder or cockpit voice recorder, they were not mandatory in 1964, and that meant that investigators could only theorize. Everything pointed to instrument failure, combined with pilot disorientation as the most probable cause. The crash of Flight 304, it was one of several incidents in the 1960s that exposed critical vulnerabilities in jet aviation. And in its wake, pressure mounted for improved cockpit warning systems, better pilot training for instrument failures, and ultimately mandatory black box recorders. Innovations that have since saved so many lives. For Kenneth Spencer's admirers, his passing was a heartbreaking loss, silencing a voice that had inspired so many. But he was one of 58 lives lost that night, each with their own story, their own destination, their own future, stolen in an instant. The tragedy of Flight 304 faded from public memory, eclipsed by larger disasters in later years. But aviation is built on the lessons of its past, and the echoes of that fateful night still linger every aircraft that now carries its passengers safely home. Every checklist followed, every instrument double-checked, every flight that lands without incident, it still lingers in every aircraft. Each one owes something to those lost in the dark waters of Lake Pontchartrain that fateful day. These are Interesting Things with JC.